Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Guess what, Will?
What?
We did it. We watched every single Harry Potter movie in order.
And within the span of a month.
Yep. Yeah. So as he just said, we've been watching these in the span of a month and recording the podcast, well before the release dates. So actually, when this podcast is ready to come out, it will be October. And so perfect for spooky season for our listeners. And we're talking about, Harry Potter. I know Harry Potter is like witches and I guess wizards. It does get associated with Halloween sometimes. Like people throw like Halloween themed, Harry Potter themed Halloween parties and stuff like that. Oddly enough, I feel like Harry Potter gets associated with Christmas way more. Like, I don't know. I see it like ABC or not, sorry, Freeform, not ABC Family anymore, puts on Harry Potter for like their 25 days of Christmas. But I mean, I guess it's fitting to end in October for our Harry Potter series. So I guess before we get into it, I'll just be like, how are we feeling? How are we feeling now about getting through the series, getting to the end?
I hope I don't have to see another one of these for a while. Cinematically, a lot of them, as they went along, were pretty, were fun to watch. Story-wise, it was as shallow as a puddle. And there were some good moments, and my favorite moment probably of the entire franchise was in this last movie. And that's not good when it takes 8 movies to get to my favorite moment. I will say before I get to my voting that movie number 2, The Chamber of Secrets, was the best out of all of them, mainly because of the practical effects.
And I think I like Prisoner of Azkaban, which I know it has the time turner thing in it, and that like unravels a lot of the story logically. But I just really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was well done out of the ones we saw. What do you think the worst one is? I vote Order of the Phoenix. Just saying.
It's definitely going to have to be Deathly Hallows Part 1. I got close to wanting to just turn it off at a couple points just because it was just nonsense. It was just a filler.
I could see, yeah. Because it was like you're agreeing with like Rotten Tomatoes on that. They've got the lowest rating. I think it was more boring than Order of the Phoenix. And I feel like Order of the Phoenix was pretty boring for some reason.
Order of the Phoenix had the cool meme stuff at the end that kind of elevated it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember that very specifically from Order of the Phoenix. But yeah, the first Deathly Hallows, the one before this, was rough. So this movie has something going for it, which is it was not the first one. It had a better flow and plot, and people weren't just, sitting around being sad. Things were happening.
I think it was also the shortest movie in the franchise.
Really?
I think it was only like an hour and a half long.
Wow. You would feel like for the final film, they would have made it like, longer than the other ones.
Yeah. Well, they used any extra plot they could have had in the last movie because they, for some reason needed to divide up the book into 2.
So we'll do a quick rating out of 10. Or do we do out of 5 out of 10?
Out of 10.
Okay. Deathly Hallows Part 2. I want to give it like an 8. My heart kind of says a 7, but I'm like, you know what? They really pulled out the stops for
they pulled out the stops and then they dropped the stops all over the floor.
I mean, there's a lot of I was actually editing today the first podcast we did of the series, and we were talking about how bad the CGI was in the first movie, and the CGI obviously much better in this one. The special effects were notable and were enjoyable, and that's what I think I want to give it more, because I feel like the filmmakers, there was a lot of effort put into this because it is the grand finale, so I want to give them that extra point for that, and then I'll let you rate it.
As you were talking, my brain was considering this, the scene in A Christmas Story where the dad hands Ralphie all the bolts for the car, and his one job is to keep them all together and keep it, keep track of them. And then all the bolts go flying and they're pretty much going to be lost to time. That's how I felt, because all the bolts were here. Everything was ready to go. And I felt like so many story-making decisions just threw the bolts to the sky and were like, we did our best. And a lot of it was really simple story fulfillment. Maybe part of it was in the book. I've never read the book. But also part of it was filmmaking decisions. I felt like made certain moments that should have been triumphant very flat. So I give it a 7.5. I think that is fair. It's not a 5 like last movie was, but it's nowhere near movies that would rank like a 9 or a 10.
So I just realized I kind of pulled a Scott Aukerman. If we listen to Comedy Bang Bang in this household, but he always is forgetting to intro the show, and I forgot to intro the show. So we are Two Christians Watch. We have been going through the whole Harry Potter series for the first time, Will and I. We just finished it, and so our podcast, we watch cinema from a Christian perspective and then talk about cinema from a Christian perspective. We see film as spiritually valuable, having innate properties that reflect the beauty and truth of God. Now, like I've said multiple times, this series, we really just kind of are reacting to seeing and being exposed to Harry Potter for the first time. We do talk about like the morals of the films and what they do reflect, as in like God's qualities or truth or beauty. And we usually do that at the end. I'm looking at our notes. We have just more questions really about this movie. We have more, why did this happen? Why are these people doing this way? Then we really have, this scene between these two characters and what they said was so just really resonated with me. We're not doing a lot of that this time. So just to be forewarned for Harry Potter, it's kind of been that way for these movies. But we've been having some fun, I think. I don't know. Will kind of looked at me like, nah. It's fun to do the podcast, right, Will?
It's fun.
It is fun. Okay, so this is the part of the show where Will gives the summary of the movie, and then we go into our little notes and we just talk about the things. We're like, hey, this is the thing that we need to be talking about with this movie. This is the thing we need to dive into. So I'll go and let him do his little spiel.
And so this movie begins with a immediate recap of how the last one ended, with Voldemort seizing the Elder Wand. That was Elden Ring, which is a video game. The Wand.
Elder Scrolls.
And then, so it's just the same exact shot of him, taking the wand from the dead body of Dumbledore and seizing power. And then it cuts back to the beach where Harry is burying Dobby, and they're like, okay, we've got to make a plan. And so they decide they're going to go to the bank from the first movie and go into Bellatrix's vault because they believe she has
a Horcrux. They also have a goblin with them that was somehow, he was in the dungeon at the Malfoy Manor at the last movie.
The goblin is actually the main goblin who runs the bank.
Yeah, or at least he works there. He does something important there. He can get them inside.
Right. So they're like, hey, do you know, like they ask him, like, do you know if she has any more Horcruxes in there? And he's like, maybe. And they're like, all right, we're going to make a deal with you. We're going to give you the Sword of Gryffindor if you could get us in there.
Why would they do that, Will?
Because they're desperate. I mean, but I think Harry also knows it's a safe bet because it doesn't like stay in one area for very long. It like kind of goes invisible and goes to the next person who needs it the most. So they go to the bank. They decide to use Polyjuice Potion again to get into the vault because they're obviously they're not going to allow Harry and Hermione and Ron to get in there. So they give Harry the cloak and they put the goblin with Harry. And then they're like, hey, why don't we make Hermione into Bellatrix? So she uses the Polyjuice Potion. And then they're like, hey, Ron, we're going to put you in a goth costume from like the mid 2000s. And then you're going to grow a beard. We don't explain how he grows the beard. Probably magic, but he looks exactly like Ron, just with a little more facial hair.
He is also not dressed up as anybody.
No.
They're like, you look like you'd fit.
Yeah. So they just throw him in there with them. And so they're trying to get into the bank. There's like a guard goblin who's like, are you really Bellatrix? Because you're speaking like a little girl. And it's not working. They're not able to convince him. They're worried that they're going to call the police on them, so to speak. When Harry's like, I got an idea. He uses Imperio.
Yeah, it's the curse that illegal. It's like one of the top 3 you cannot do to like force people to do your will.
Right. So this curse forces the goblin to allow them into Bellatrix's vault. They go in and then they find the Horcrux, but the goblin that was with them was like, ha, I got you here. I got the sword. Peace out. He locks them in the vault. There's a spell on all the items that if you touch it, they all multiply infinitely. So the room is filling up with, bowls and cups and coins. And so they're able to burst through. They find out the goblins have a dragon chained up. They are able to use a dragon to escape the vault. In the meantime, the dragon kills a lot of goblins. They escape the vault. They fly off and they destroy the Horcrux. Harry is continuing to have Voldemort visions, and he has a vision that Voldemort arrived at the bank and found that the vault was open and kills all the goblins. And then he also realizes that the sword of Gryffindor has disappeared from the hands of the bad goblin and is MIA. So then he's like, he has another vision, and this vision is of the last Horcrux that he believes, and it's at Hogwarts. So he has to sneak into Hogwarts, but he goes back to the village where he was born, the village that Dumbledore was from, and he finds Dumbledore's brother. And Dumbledore's brother is like, I don't want to help you guys. You don't.
That wasn't in Godric's Hollow. That's outside of Hogwarts.
Anyways, so they go to Dumbledore's brother. He's like, I don't know if I want to help you guys. You don't really know my brother. My brother wasn't always to be trusted. Then it comes to find out he's been helping not Harry and the gang. He's been helping the kids at Hogwarts, also helping the Resistance. So what they do is he gets a passageway to Hogwarts and gets them all the way there with the help of Neville. So they get to Hogwarts to the room of requirement, and they're like, hey, we're reunited with all our friends, and so we're gonna go and retake Hogwarts, which is super easy. They literally just get back into their uniforms, disguise themselves, and then they go to have a meeting with Snape. Like, Snape has like this all-call meeting to the entire student body because they find out that Harry was near the campus. Surprise, Harry is on campus grounds. He's in the meeting. He confronts Snape. Then McGonagall decides to jump in and help protect Harry, and Snape leaves. And officially, Harry's team has taken the school. So McGonagall kind of takes the leadership reins, and she begins to set up camp because Voldemort basically sends them a telepathic signal saying, hey, we know Harry's here. If you don't give up Harry, then I'm going to destroy the school and everybody in it. And so they're like, well, we're not giving up Harry. So what we're going to do is we're going to batten down the hatches, get people in position to fight. And so, you know, all the team from the beginning of the last movie are together, except for Mad-Eye Moody, who's dead. And they're all like armed and ready to go. McGonagall does the coolest thing, like I mentioned earlier. The coolest scene in any of these movies. There are stone guards, like stone soldier statues that she brings to life, and these are like medieval soldiers, and they have shields and armor and swords. She animates them, she brings them to life, and they are now helping guard the school. And it's a really cool scene, and they are on the bridge into Hogwarts. They're protecting that, and then everybody's taking position. They form a spell. They have spells that put a shield barrier over the school, and the Dementors leave because there were Dementors that were guarding the school, like monitoring it. And Voldemort arrives, and not just Voldemort, not just Bellatrix, but like army of what looks to be like tens of thousands of villains, which there are really no grounds for ever before except for this very moment. But they're like, okay, let's start the invasion, and the battle begins. I'm not going to go through beat by beat because that would just be exhausting. But what happens is Harry finds out that Snape has gone to meet with Voldemort, and he also finds out that Voldemort has the last Horcrux, which is his snake, the big snake. And so he's like, well, I gotta go kill the snake. And so he finds Snape talking to Voldemort. Voldemort sends the snake to kill Snape. And when Voldemort pieces out, Harry runs up to the dying body of Snape, and Snape is like, take my tears in this vial and take it to Dumbledore's little
the bowl thing with the memories,
the seeing bowl where you can look and see the memories of a person. He pours it in and finds out the big supposed twist that Snape was always a good guy, that Snape loved Harry's mom, and that Harry's dad was a bully and took his mom from Snape, and that Snape, because he still loved the mom even when the mom was dead, loved Harry and wanted to protect Harry. And also because the way the spell happened with Voldemort is that Voldemort and Harry were like linked, and so the only way for Voldemort to die was if Harry died. And so Harry has to die so that Voldemort can die. That was the big secret. And so Dumbledore sends Snape to work with Voldemort to keep an eye on him. So he's working as a double agent. And so that's the whole shtick with that. So Harry's like, well, I'm going to go out. I'm going to meet Voldemort. He's in the woods. He's in the Forbidden Forest. And I'm going to just let him kill me. And so he has basically the rune of resurrection, and he sees his dead parents and the recently dead Lupin, who dies off screen, which we'll get to why this bothers me. And he also sees Sirius Black, and they're all there to talk to him, give him counsel about the fact he's about to die, and they tell him we love you. And then he goes and Voldemort kills him. He's like, boom, laser blast him. And he wakes up and he's not in the afterlife. He's in like this limbo, and it's a pure white version of the train station that they always going on. And Dumbledore's there, and Dumbledore's like, hey, it's good to see you. You're dead, but you don't have to stay dead. All you have to do is take this train that doesn't exist back to the world. Also, under this bench is a bloody corpse of Voldemort.
But he has a baby.
Yeah, he's not dead. He's just like a wrinkled up, shriveled up, old, wet, red baby. And he's just sitting there shaking under a bench. And there's no explanation.
Voldemort's just like, leave him there. It's fine.
Yeah, Dumbledore's like,
not Voldemort. Sorry, Dumbledore. Dumbledore tells Harry just to leave him there.
Yeah, and there's no explanation of what that is or why he's there. None of that. Dumbledore's like, you can leave whenever you want to. Go back to the world. And he's like, okay. And so it wakes up, and Hagrid, who has been captured by Voldemort, is carrying the dead body of Harry. And Voldemort walks into Hogwarts saying, I killed Harry Potter. He's dead, blah, blah, blah. He's like, now join me or I'm going to kill all of you. And so Neville gives this triumphant message of like, even if Harry's dead, we don't have to give in to you. We're going to keep fighting to our dying breath. Harry wakes up, and now he can face Voldemort, who's terrified because all he knew was that Harry was dead. And so he begins to fight with Harry. They go back and forth. Meanwhile, the kids are trying to kill the snake.
Nagini. That's the snake's name.
So they're going back and forth trying to kill the snake, and eventually Neville is the one who kills the snake, and because he kills the snake, Voldemort is able to be defeated, and so Harry is starting to attack him, and the Elder Wand fails Voldemort because it doesn't belong to Voldemort. The rule is whoever... All right, it was owned by Dumbledore, but if the person, whoever disarms the person who owns it, then owns it. But then whoever disarms that person, then owns it. And so Voldemort thought it was himself that owned it because because Snape killed Dumbledore, and then he killed Snape. But because Draco Malfoy disarmed Dumbledore, and then Harry disarmed Draco Malfoy, it belonged to Harry. And so because the Elder Wand did not belong to Voldemort, it didn't work for him. And so Harry was able to defeat him. And then Harry takes and breaks the Elder Wand and throws it into a ravine, and they walk off into the sunset. And there's an epilogue where they, 19 years later, I think it is, Harry is with Ginny, and they're married, they have kids, and then Ron is with Hermione, they have kids. For some reason, we have a Draco Malfoy who completely has no consequences for the actions he's done, has kids, and they're all going to Hogwarts, and they all wish him goodbye, and that's the wrap of the story. And it's over.
And it's over, unless you count The Cursed Child, which a lot of people do not. The Cursed Child was like a fan fiction sequel about the boy Albus Severus Potter or whatever, the boy that at the very end, and a lot of people don't consider it canon because it's like they feel like it's not true to the characters from Harry Potter at all. So it's over in a lot of people's minds. It's over. So we have some notes written down here to throw darts at the wall here and talk about it. The first thing we have written down is that so actually a lot of Lupin's characterization, like he gets married to Tonks and they have a baby, and then they die. All of that happens off screen completely. It was just, man. And then you also have that Snape's death happens off screen. It happens like semi off screen. We hear it happen.
No, he gets attacked. We see him get attacked off screen, and then Harry's with him when he dies. But it feels very unfulfilling. Like we don't see him get attacked. We don't see him like make a final stand or anything like that. He basically goes limp and just takes the hit, and we don't even see it. Just happens. I'm like, this character's been here since day one, and we're not gonna experience the downfall, and then finding out he was a good guy the whole time felt even more flat. Like there was no like hints or evidence. There was no like, he's not secretly having conversations with Dumbledore where it's like, maybe he's a good guy, maybe he's not. None of that. It was just like, I don't know. It just felt forced and flat.
Yeah, it did feel like unbefitting for all that is going, especially once we find out right after that in like just 5 minutes of screen time, what Snape's real end game was, like what his real like motive was. And his death happened so quickly, like literally Voldemort's like, hey, come in this boat house with me. I think it's in a boat house or something like that. And he's like, yes, my lord, what do you need? He's like, yeah, so I think the Elder Wand's responding to you because you killed Dumbledore, so I gotta kill you, but it's only in service to me, so just take it. And then he gets bit by a giant snake.
Which, okay, wouldn't it be it literally is only for story convenience that he chose the snake? Like, why wouldn't he have chosen Avada Kedavra and just ended it quickly for him? Like, he was talking about how he was like thankful for his service. He never does that with any other character. It's the first time Voldemort's like, you know what, thank you for working with me, thank you for helping me, thank you for being loyal, I have to do this, I hate that I have to do this. And instead of being like, let me make this quick for you, I'm gonna make my snake eat you and attack you. And it's like, it's literally only so that Harry can walk in right after Voldemort leaves so he could see him still alive.
Yeah. Oh, and then his tears equals memories. I don't remember that ever being a part of how that worked.
Because the way Dumbledore always does it is like a little twirl of the wand and like a memory comes out of the brain. This one's like, I'm crying, take my tear and put it in the tub.
Put it in the tub.
But it's like, why? I'm like, that felt very left field until he did that. I'm like, that's...
Yeah. And then going back to the Lupin thing, I found out that, okay, so Tonks, the one that she can change her form and she marries Lupin and they have a baby boy and we never see the baby and he gets orphaned because they both die off screen in this movie. I found out through going through Harry Potter TikTok or something like that. Tonks' mother her name's Andromeda. She is the sister of Bellatrix and Narcissa. She's alive this whole time and we never see her or meet her, but she's the one who ends up raising their child like after they die. And I'm thinking that seems like a crucial character, and she's related to Sirius Black. She's his cousin. Why did we not meet her? I feel like, why was she not involved? Like literally both of her sisters are just causing a ruckus and they're fighting on the side that ends up killing her daughter and orphaning her grandchild. I don't know. I was like, maybe in the books, but in the movie they were just like, whatever. And they did even less service to, even part of me is like, why did they even include the hints of Lupin and Tonks' relationship? It just seemed like, I don't know why it bothered me. I know it bothered you.
Well, it bothered me that this character has been around since movie 3. So for 5 movies, it's just killed off screen. We just see his body. And I'm like, there's no satisfaction. There's no resolution. There's no arc with it. It just falls flat. And another thing that falls flat in this movie is the death of Bellatrix. So for about 4 movies now, it's been a running thing that Neville's parents were tortured and killed by Bellatrix. So Neville is an orphan. And he's been growing as a character, becoming more confident, better skill. We have a whole montage of him learning and becoming stronger as a character and being able to, stand up on his own 2 feet. And then you're like, okay, Bellatrix is here, Neville's here, we're going to get a showdown finally. And it's the Weasley mom who ends up offing Bellatrix.
And like a one-off thing.
Yeah, it's like a real quick zap, done. And I'm like, this is supposed to be the secondary boss of this franchise. She's supposed to be the secondary big bad. And she's done away in like a couple minutes. And Neville doesn't get that resolution. It doesn't really make sense why Neville wouldn't have had at least a fight with her, or at least a willingness to stand up to her. And he did back in Order of the Phoenix, but he wasn't as strong of a character until around this time. And so I felt like, again, an arc that doesn't get wrapped up, an element that doesn't get fulfillment. And I just think these are the instances where I'm like, you could have taken this another route. You could have had this more wrapped up or fine-tuned, and it wasn't.
Speaking of Bellatrix, in the very beginning, they're like, oh, we need to get into Bellatrix's vault, right? And right before that, they talk to Ollivander, the wand guy from the first movie. I guess he was a prisoner of war and from Voldemort and stuff. And he like gives them these 2 wands. He's like, this one is Draco Malfoy's, and then this one's Bellatrix. Bellatrix's wand. Forget how they got them. They got them somehow They disarmed them. And then they're like, we're going to sneak into her vault. And so they dress up Hermione like Bellatrix and Polyjuice Potion. And then they get there and they're like, can we see your wand for like identification? And they're like, I don't think that's necessary. And I'm like, you literally have her actual wand. Why would you not just take it with you to complete the ensemble? But also you have like her real wand that's not a fraud. Why did I felt it was a huge plot hole.
Again, and the other thing is like, they know what she sounds like. Everybody knows what she sounds like because she's loud and bombastic, and she walks in, quote unquote, and it's got this like little dinky little girl voice. I'm like immediately,
hello, good morning.
Yeah, immediately, like, what? Also, there was a clear moment when Harry was walking with the invisibility cloak over him. You could see their feet. You could see the shadow of their feet. I'm like, this either A, they don't care and they just want whatever, like the people, the guards there don't care, or they're just bumbling idiots. Like, for this to be a regime change that's taken place over 2 movies, and it's supposed to be like these evil bad guys who are supposed to be smart and cunning and able to outsmart everybody, they have not shown any of that at all.
And then while they're at the bank, Harry uses the unforgivable curse of Imperio on the main bank, like the president of the bank or whatever. And everything's fine. I mean, they use it only to get into where they want to go. But then when they're trying to escape, they have that dragon that's like locked up that's protecting the vaults and stuff. And Harry loses track of his mind slave, I guess, and he just waddles into the eyesight of the giant dragon, and then the dragon toasts him with its fire breath, and that guy dies. And Harry never sees consequence for that. Like, it's never brought up. He literally caused that guy to be killed.
Again, it's all fun and games, but as you watch these movies again, you're like, there's a lot that just doesn't check the boxes. Like, imagine if these movies, the concept, the story, were connect the dots piece. And it's like what they've done is like they have dots and there's a clear, obvious picture it needs to be connected with. And somebody just takes it and connects other dots with it and makes a different picture. I'm like, that's not how this works. This is not how a movie is supposed to be done. You know, they say show, don't tell, but now we're just showing and there's no explanation of what we're seeing. There's no reason. There's no rhyme. There are no rules in this universe that are followed up with. There's no like, this is a curse. If you do it, you're in trouble. This is one of the worst things you could do, you know? And then people just do it. People just Avada Kedavra or Imperio, and they just do it and nothing happens. It's not like, I was telling Hannah, I said, there should be like emotional or mental, physical toil on the person who does it. Like, it scars your mind and your body, or it's like some kind of like pain or like burden that gets put on you. Instead, there's literally nothing anymore to keep people from doing this.
Yeah, there are no real consequences for people's actions, which just make bigger plot holes in the future. I mean, they just move along. They're like, we don't have time for this. Just, wipe our hands of it, clean our hands of it, and move along. So we will move along because we have to go to our next point. So Harry is the only one who sees Voldemort actually die. And so I guess they just take his word that he's dead. Because at first, Harry's dead, in quotation marks. And then he comes back from death somehow. We don't really know how that worked. That's also on here. Harry's death. How does the magic work? How did he come back from the dead? Is it because he had the resurrection stone? But like, how did that even
then, he clearly is shown dropping the stone in the forest.
But also, I thought it was only supposed to bring the dead back for like a little bit of time, not actually bring them back to life.
But in the flashback, it said that the stone can bring somebody back, but it's like their fragment of who they are, or it's like not their full self. So none of that is explained except for that it's like convenient for Harry to come back.
Right. And then they run around the school, fly around the school. At one point they merged together, which was they fused together, which was unsettling. They are fighting in the like ruined hall, and then Neville beheads Nagini. And like right after that, the Elder One's like, oh, not working for you anymore.
Well, also, so there's a scene where Harry's fighting him, and Harry is like all tied up. Voldemort takes his wand and makes like all these ropes tie around him, and it cuts back to the kids fighting, and it cuts back again. Harry's free, and I'm like,
yeah, I was like, we don't need that detail. Just we got to get to the end. I know it was, yeah.
It's like, and this is not to hit on any the director or whoever made this, but it feels like there's a lot of times they're like, what's the target demographic for this movie? Oh, like 10 to 19-year-olds? Right. We're not going to put a lot of time into actually connecting like story plots or really explaining anything. We're just going to throw it at the screen and make it look cool, and that's it. And if you are a person who is our age, who is in their upper 20s, and you're watching this, you might be like, what? There are things that they have introduced. There's things that happen that are like not explained, that are not reinforced, that are not elaborated on, and you're supposed to just assume that it's okay.
Yeah. So during the final fight of Hogwarts, oh gosh, I have two things that are just random I want to talk about. So we always said that Harry and Luna have more chemistry than Harry and Ginny. And I guess even Harry and Hermione have chemistry too. But like, it's revealed that Neville has a huge crush on Luna. And he's like, I might die. I'm going to tell her I love her. And he just blossoms in that final battle. His Gryffindor really pops off. He's like, I am brave. I have all this adrenaline from fighting. I'm the most noble. And then he tells Luna that he is in love with her. I think they get married canonically, and I think that's super cute. I love Luna. I love Neville. You know what? Finally, a canon couple in this story I can get behind. I think Lupin and Tonks were kind of cute too, but I didn't really know that much about them. And then, okay, when McGonagall takes over takes over the head mistress or whatever the school, Voldemort's like, hey, he could just talk to people's minds directly, by the way. He does that several times, and I feel like that could have been used more effectively in his case. But he tells everyone at the school as they turn in Harry Potter that he won't go and hurt the school. And one Slytherin girl says, what are you waiting for? We should grab him. Only one Slytherin girl, and no one, including all the other Slytherins, don't move. And then McGonagall? She says, take the Slytherins, all of them, to the dungeon. Just because this one girl, like, why not just her? No one else said anything. It was just her.
And then they get to the dungeon by not the groundskeeper, but
Filch.
Filch takes him to the dungeon. He closes the door. As soon as he does, an explosion happens. The door opens back up, and they all run out. And I think that's the last we see of them. This is like 100 kids, and they're just run off into the distance. We don't know what happens to them. There's no resolution of where are they? What are they okay?
Yeah. And then at the end, okay, so I was talking about for a while, speaking about the Slytherins, the most prominent Slytherin is Draco. We have been getting hints that Draco is starting to turn to the good side because he was just seeing all the stuff that the dark side was making his parents do and how Voldemort was so evil and horrible. Very end, Voldemort, well, not very end, but Voldemort shows up. He's like, Harry Potter's dead. He's like, if you want to, deviate. What's the word I'm looking for when you, defect. Is that the right time? If you want to defect.
Say the word join.
I'm trying to use my SAT words. If you want to join our side and avoid, being, I don't know what he was going to do to them, kill them, enslave them. I have no idea. Or I guess they were going to fight more. Come on over. And Malfoy's parents are like, Draco, come over here right now. And Draco stands his ground. And then his mom's like, Draco. And then he goes over there. And I was so disappointed in him. I was like, Draco, this was your time to shine. And he was a mommy's boy, and he just was like, yes, I'll go over there. And I'm like, you just saw people die because of this. You think Harry Potter is actually dead because of all this, and then Draco goes over, and then when it's revealed that Harry Potter is alive, even before Harry kills Voldemort, Lucius and Narcissa and Draco, they just bounce. They just leave. They retreat. They abandon their side. They are just gone. And then it never comes up. Like nothing. I don't know if there was any repercussions for them being on that side or fighting on the side of the Death Eaters. They just straight up left. And I don't know what happened after that. We know that Draco grows up and gets married and has kids because we see him at the very end. But yeah.
I guess another thing that bothers me with this is that both Neville and Malfoy have the opportunity to be like natural story progression. Like, this character is growing naturally and it's not forced, and the way the story is progressing. So it makes sense that Draco should have been the one to turn sides and stand up. Instead, they're like, well, let's force Snape to be the double agent. Let's force Snape to switch sides. Let's force this. And with Neville, I'm like, Neville had more of a natural rise to heroism, being heroic and being confident and strong and all that, more than Ron or Harry. Everything Harry has happened to him is like forced to the point of nausea. It's like, oh, what's happening today? Somebody's trying to kill Harry? Well, Harry's going to conquer it. It's like, but Neville is like grinding from being this kid who's bullied to learning, training, becoming stronger, becoming better, to being confident, standing up on his own 2 feet. He becomes the natural like character you want to see do well, and then it's just kind of like poo-pooed off. And I'm like, you had 2 opportunities to have a natural story progression that just fell flat, but then you have opportunities where stories are being forced and it lands hard, it lands rough,
or it doesn't land at all. It just like goes off a cliff and you're like, okay, bye. I have written down here, why doesn't Voldemort use Polyjuice Potion? I don't know. He just doesn't.
Well, there's so many other ways he could have gotten into Hogwarts. Like, what about the thing in the room? Oh, that got caught on fire. I forgot about that. The room of entitlement, the room of requirement caught on fire because Draco had a fight with Harry.
Yeah, and also Goyle, like his henchman that's been with us since movie 1, totally died, and they were just like, oh no. There's
no emotion about it. But he could have polyjuiced his way in there. He could have. Why couldn't Voldemort do disapparate?
Yeah. Obviously, there is not really great security against polyjuice deception, as we've seen time and time again. So why not?
We don't really see the Dementors doing a whole lot of fighting at all in the final battle.
They're not really. I think the Dementors, they only are under the control of whoever has control of the Ministry. And yeah, I don't know why they didn't use them to fight. You just looked at me like, yeah, obviously.
They could take souls. I don't know why Voldemort wouldn't be like, hey, you guys are the front line. Go get some kids.
And then you also made the point that, like, why don't they use more animals under, like, an enchantment? The spiders do show up, and they fight on the side of the Death Eaters. And I'm like, I don't remember how that even happened. I don't know why that happens.
Why didn't the centaurs come in? We already saw them twice in these movies. Why didn't they come in to help? Why didn't Hagrid send his brother? Why didn't Hagrid send any of the other animals we've seen?
Why didn't they get dragons?
It's illogical. It just becomes like, you got stuff that happens. Like, you have magical weapons and tools that should have been used that weren't. They were just like, it's just not convenient for the story.
Hey, so do you know where all of the soldiers came from for the Death Eater army? All the people that just showed up to the fight? You know, I gotta say, because I don't remember there ever being that many people.
No, it's just like,
they're just like, he has like 500?
It looks like several thousand. That's what it looks like.
Where did all these people come from?
Yeah, I mean, because what we're showing is that this is only happening to wizards in the UK. This is not wizards across the world. This is not an army of wizards
And wizards are only a fraction of the population.
So this is really becoming confusing, and I don't know.
I know, it's like every time we've seen Death Eaters, it's like the prominent Death Eaters, which is, first of all, Lucius Malfoy. Don't know what happened to him after he just walked off, because he was definitely like pretty high up the chain.
Also, another drop story. First couple movies, Lucius was like second bad guy. He was like real threatening. And then Voldemort gets the power and he's just like, I'm scared. I don't know if I want to do this, guys. And he's got this 5 o'clock shadow. He looks like he's just come off the street for 3 years.
He went to Azkaban and they messed him up in there. He looks horrible after he got out of prison.
But he became he was more of a believable natural villain than Bellatrix.
They set him up so much, even from the second movie, and him being Draco's dad. I just felt like, you're right. What's his name? Is it Jason? Is it Jason Isaac? Jason Isaacs, is that his name? He like showed up for like 2 days of filming, and he's just like, okay, I guess I'll go home now. And I'm like, why did we drop the ball on this? But then also, where did all of these Death Eaters come from? We've not seen these numbers or any indication that there were these many Death Eater side army people, and there are just like tons of them suddenly at the end. And so and then Voldemort's whole plan, his ace, his little trick up his sleeve is getting the Elder Wand. And we have this whole whole confusing, like we said, like this chain of events that's like, actually, it responded to Harry in that moment because Voldemort got it wrong and that it wasn't actually Snape who had the power. It was Draco because he disarmed Dumbledore. But then it was like, what? But Harry finds this all out. And at the end, he actually destroys the Elder Wand and throws it in like a river. And his friends are like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Now, I think I know why. And you wrote down, why did he not keep it? I think he did that because he's like, this is too powerful and people want it too much. It would be better for everyone if it didn't exist. That's what I think he was like, I just went through a war. I don't want to do that again. No one needs this kind of power. And so he just destroyed it. Kind of like the ring in Lord of the Rings. But did you want to add to any of that? Because you're the one who wrote it down.
Well, so it's different from that because in Lord of the Rings, the ring was possessed essentially by Sauron. The Elder Wand was not. The Elder Wand was just a powerful tool. You could argue that if the story was true, that death created it. But from what they were kind of hinting, not many people even believed that the story was real, like that the Elder Wand even existed. And so who better to hold on to it and keep it safe than Harry, the person who would use it wisely, who would use it to become like a very famous, powerful wizard who could do good with it.
I think it was very wise of him to destroy it. I support his decision on that. I think that was the right thing to do. He still has the invisibility cloak, and I guess somewhere there's the other Deathly Hallows, so I'm like, don't know what that's going to do. I mean...
Also, they kept hyping up this idea of like, if you have all 3 Deathly Hallows, you rule death. And not one person had all 3 at the same time at all in these stories.
Okay, so at the end, when the snitch opened up and the resurrection stone fell out, my brain was like, okay, this is how... But he didn't have the cloak with him, unless he did. If he could get the Elder Wand and the stone and the cloak, that's how Harry was going to come back from the dead after Voldemort killed him. But like, he didn't have all 3 of those things together.
No, he didn't hold the Elder Wand until the end of the movie. And the cloak, you can't argue that he always has a cloak on hand. It's a cloak. And the thing is as big as his body.
And it's invisible, so we don't know if he had it or not.
Right. But even if he did, okay, if regular cloaks aren't able to be like folded up into like tiny little pieces and put in a pocket, it's still a large piece of clothing. And so you can't just hide it anywhere. It's a bulky piece of clothing. So just because it's invisible does not mean it loses its volume or shape. So he can't always have it on him. And so they keep hyping this up like, oh, he's going to you can control death. And I'm like, that's got to be Voldemort's plan, to own all 3. He never cares. He never mentions the other 2. That's never part of his plan.
Yeah, that just felt really sloppy.
Like,
I always use that sloppy writing, but
I'm like, why wouldn't Voldemort want to control death?
He wants to live forever.
Right. That's the whole reason why he's been killing people to create Horcruxes.
So why not try to find, if he's like, oh, I found the Elder Wand, obviously they exist.
Right. So that means there's other 2. And it's never revealed like, oh, Harry has the other 2 or Harry has one of them.
Yeah, like why put this in the story?
Why make this kind of cool element that I'm like, this kind of sounds fun, like a little bit, like to gather them all and be able to use it to, control the very aspect of death. And it's like, we're not going to do anything with that at all.
It just is, it feels almost irresponsible as like from a writing standpoint to create something so powerful and just to be like, it kind of came into play. And then it to like completely be used illogically, which happens a lot in these stories. So Dumbledore had a master plan that Harry was just kind of moved around in as a pawn, literally. And it worked, but a lot of people have criticized it for being abusive, manipulative, highly traumatizing to Harry and his friends. Also putting the lives of the entire student body at risk continually. I would have to agree. But also I'm like, I know that he was trying to keep as much information as possible away from Voldemort. And maybe he knew there was some type of mental link between Harry and Voldemort. And so he didn't want Harry to know too much because maybe Voldemort could figure it out. And he's like, well, that's even worse. But he's a huge threat. Like, I guess, is there ever a time where the end justifies the means? Or is it...
Are you talking about in general? Because that is a loaded question that we do not have time to get into. Because
maybe one day we'll revisit the whole Dumbledore's character and why he did what he did. Because it feels like, hey, it worked out, but the way you did it also caused a lot of problems. It definitely cost Snape's mental well-being and a big chunk of his life, and eventually his whole life. He died for it. Dumbledore died for it. Harry got to live, but he also like went through it. Also, Harry had a lot of people kind of die for his cause, that he has to live with that for now on. He lost a lot of his friends who lost their lives defending not only him but themselves and their livelihood, because they believed that defending Harry was the right thing to do, which it was. So there was a right thing to do, and I understand that. But like, could there been a way that Dumbledore could have done this that would have been better?
The only thing I'm going to say is communication. I mean, if you couldn't communicate with Harry, then you should have definitely communicated with McGonagall, with, Lupin, with other teachers, with other wizards. And yeah, you couldn't trust the Ministry necessarily. But again, this story takes place in a wizard vacuum, and yet they've admitted that there are wizards all around the world. You're telling me that these are the only good wizards? Are these the only allies he has? And so it just kind of starts falling apart, where I'm like, you put a lot of your trust and your plan on children and hope that they were doing the right thing and that they were going to get it right.
I will say they did get, get some things right. And what I was trying to say about, like, there was a right thing to do and a right thing to stand up for. We're going to talk about, I wrote down morals that were good, things that we saw at the heart of the film, of the story, that were godly or truthful or beautiful. And the most inspirational thing for me was Neville's character, actually, in the final battle. He was like, no matter what, we're going to fight for the right to party. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to fight for what's right, even if Harry's dead. It kind of reminds me of the part in the Silver Chair, which I think you don't like the Silver Chair. I think it's like one of the books you don't like the most from Chronicles of Narnia. But in the Silver Chair, when the characters, they're like underground, it's like enchanted. So when they're underground, they start to forget what life was like up above. And they're like, there's like a queen, an evil queen that has them like kept underground. And she's like, Narnia wasn't real. Like, how can you even believe it was real? Because she's trying to basically gaslight them and to be like, you've always been here. I forget the character's name, but he says, I will live as if Narnia is real, or I will live as a Narnian even if Narnia isn't real. And I don't know the whole quote, but the gist of it is that, like, I know that's what's right and beautiful and true. I know that living for good is what's the best thing to do, even if, like, there is no real reward for living for good or doing what's good. And that's kind of what happens with Neville. He basically says, like, yeah, we're going to fight for what's right, even if we're going to lose. Like, he's like, Harry Potter's dead. We might lose. We probably will lose, but that doesn't mean we just give up and we give over to the evil. We still stand up for what's right. We still do what's right. And I was like, Neville, I'm glad Luna is with you. Yeah, I'm glad he didn't die. I was afraid he was going to die in this movie a couple times. Also, he got to kill Nagini, technically also killing Voldemort, so that was pretty cool. I also wrote down for this that God's goodness will triumph. God's goodness will always triumph over evil. So the whole thing is that Voldemort makes this very elaborate plan, though there's a lot of hiccups and chinks in that armor of a plan that he creates. But he tries to go against this prophecy of Harry basically coming to kill him. There's a prophecy made that no matter what, he will be killed in his endeavor to bring evil. And he tries very hard to go against this prophecy. And obviously that doesn't work. And so what I'm saying is that because God is sovereign and God is good, no matter how hard evil tries to conquer, in the end, they will always lose to God's goodness. God will always provide a way, always provide a hero in whatever form that will be. Well, obviously God is the hero, but God can never be triumphed. His goodness can never be triumphed. Even now, when it seems like the world will always be evil and it'll always be bad and always be marred by sin, there will come a day when Christ comes back and everything will be made right. It was already completed, really finished on the cross. And so that idea of that, even though the evil worked so hard and tried so hard and did so many, just put this gargantuan effort, it could not overcome the good.
No, I would agree. I think you said it beautifully that I think that's a moral that movies can keep having, because at the end of the day, people want that to be the reality. People want that you could fight for good and good will triumph. That even if it doesn't look like it will, that good will come out at the end. And it's something that keeps people going back to movies for any kind of movie you can think of. If the reason why movies do well, the reason why stories and books is because at the end of the day, whether they want to admit it or not, people want to see good triumph. They want to see good come out at the end. They want to see justice served. And so when a movie does it and does it well, it's reflective of the true nature of the eventual God conquering and triumphing over evil.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, Will, we have gotten to another end of another film series. We are initiated, we are baptized, we were formed in the fire, we went through the trials, we watched all of Harry Potter. We know the whole story now. How do you feel?
Not as enticed and excited as I was hoping I was going to be. I was hoping that, by movie 7 or 8, I was like, okay, I was hoping that I would fall in love with it like everybody else has. And hearing my friends talk about it like it's the best thing ever, I'm like, do we watch the same thing? There were some good elements to it. There are some exciting elements. There are some great, genuinely good cinematography shots. But in general, I was a little let down. Overall, I would give the series a 6.5 out of 10. Would I watch it again? Probably in about 5 to 10 years, I'd give it another shot. Probably try to be a little less cynical this time. But yeah, we finished the ride, and I'm glad we did.
I think I'll give it a 7 out of 10. It's enjoyable. It takes a lot of suspension of disbelief, but I can definitely see where it took some people. Obviously, took some people by storm, but like I could see where people enjoy it heavily. They're like, "This is really cool. And also it's like an urban fantasy. What I mean by that is like it's kind of like Twilight in the way that it has all these high fantasy ideas and archetypes, like different creatures and wizards and magic, but it's set in like 90s London, it's in a different setting than way back in a land far away in a time long ago, which I do like that. I like because it felt more grounded. It felt more like with real life consequence, and then ironically not because they didn't have consequences. But yeah, I do. I mean, I could see where that really stuck with the kids who grew up with it because it's not so far away and out there and far away from their lives that they are having to really put themselves in this other world. It's kind of bringing that high fantasy to them and on their playing field. And I think that formula worked very well. And I think it definitely created a really interesting world and story. So maybe when we revisit it later, we'll be less cynical. Maybe we will enjoy it more. So, okay. This is our last podcast about Harry Potter. We did it. We're done. Woo! That'll be it for us for Harry Potter. We'll be signing off here. Oh, real quick, do you pick the best character and the worst character from Harry Potter, the whole series?
Best is Lupin. Worst is probably Hermione.
Oh wow, really? Wow. It's rough on Hermione. I love McGonagall. Like best, I am McGonagall fangirl. I love Luna too. Worst. I guess Filch. He really got on my nerves. I feel like there's another character I'm forgetting that was like lost in the ether, but
Filch should have been fired 3 movies ago.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, on that note, we will see you guys later. We're Two Christians Watch. We hope you have a good month until we see you again.
Bye.
Bye.